I've already exited close to $500 million worth of deals. I bought it for $12,000 a unit. Today it's worth $100,000 a unit. What'd you guys smell? I heard one person say, it just stinks, man. But that's also the smell of money. I won't buy a deal unless I can double the equity for the investors in 3 to 5 years or less.
So what is the secret? What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs today in the studio, folks. As always, I got a real treat for you, especially if you're in the real estate game. Trey Stone is in the house. What's up, Trey?
Man, just happy to be here.
That sounds like a stage name almost. It sounds so cool. Trey Stone.
It's my SAG name, you know.
Yeah. So folks, if you guys don't follow this dude yet, go to on Instagram at the Trade Stone or the Trey Stone. Website, you can go Trey Stone, Trey. What's Trey short for?
Nothing. That's just my name.
Just Trey?
Yep.
Trey Stone. I forget who I knew his name was Trey. And I remember now. He was the third.
Yeah, so I was originally, and then I got adopted. When I got adopted, we changed my name. And everybody would call me Trey, and so
because you were a third?
Because I was a third.
Yeah, I never knew Trey was for third. And when he told me that, I'm like, dude, that makes sense because it's 3.
Yeah. So when they said, what do you want your name to be? You're getting adopted if you want to make any changes. I was like, can we just make the first name what everybody calls me already, which is Trey? So that's what we did.
Right on. So if you guys don't follow him now, you know where to go follow him. I suggest you do if you like to make money. The dude made a bunch of money. Let me tell my story, and then I'll read what my team wrote. But it sounds to me like, in a nutshell, you made a bunch of money in real estate. Then you kind of retired, made a little bit of a swat, and then relaxed for the last 10, 15 years. And now you're coming back.
That's about right.
So how much do you think you need before you just go screw around for 10 years?
You know, when I first started out, I thought if I could make $100,000 a year off real estate and not have a regular job, then I would stop. And then that number moved and moved and moved. And for me, when it got to the point where I could make, more than that in a month if I didn't work anymore, even if I sold everything but one property, I thought, okay, like, who am I kidding that I still need to move that bar, even further. And on top of that, I was at a time when the market was just really overpriced. Everything was really expensive. And I thought, this is a perfect time to sell. Had just had 2 twins, and not that you could have any other kind of twins, but there was 2 of them. And I thought, I want to be around for them more than my parents were around when I was a kid. So I decided, didn't really need more money. That's enough. That being said, then you get bored when they grow up. Nobody told me that part. They get older.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, all my friends got back in the game because all these high interest rates drove prices back down for the first time in, a decade? I mean, I think you've done some real estate investing. It's been a long run where we had these crazy low rates and crazy high prices. So it was too tempting for me to sit on the sidelines anymore. Now that I see stuff trading for half of what it was selling for before, combined with the fact that the kids have their own thing going on now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people into real estate investing now. I think the secret's out that it's a hell of an investment. Great way to build wealth. And, long-term and short-term, if you ask me. I'd like it more long-term. Like a billionaire told me one time, real estate's great, but the trick there is never sell. And I couldn't understand what he meant, like never sell. Like right now, I'll bet you if I would ask you, do you wish you didn't sell all those? Your answer would be no.
God, yes. I wish I had not sold them all.
Correct.
I wish I never sold anything. I bought these deals for $200 million. I sold them for around $350 million. Now they're worth over $500 million and maybe more than that.
And all that cash flow you gave up.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's what the billionaire told me. And it's like, I didn't get it. I'm like, well, how would you get any money then? But they're you leverage and, so never sell. This time you're going to sell?
Well, it depends. When I'm looking at the market now, I kind of see a lot of different things happening politically that impact real estate, especially in the housing market. It's different if you're buying maybe industrial storage units. So assuming that we can still have a decent place in America to own real estate, which there's already some states that it's not. But if we can keep that in Texas where I'm at, then yeah, if the market continues to go the way it's been going, there's really no reason to sell. You can access your equity just by refinancing and pulling that equity out, then that's not even taxable. So you're already not paying taxes on your cash flow, as you know, from depreciation. Then you refinance the equity out. You're not paying tax on that because loan proceeds are non-taxable either. And then that thing just keeps going up in value from there. The thing is, the partners have got to get that money back one way or the other after a certain amount of time. I find that most people get deal fatigue, maybe 5 years into a deal. But you give them their check back either from a sale or you give a check back from a refi, they just want to go buy one again. So if you can give it to them from a refi, and then that way they still have their original asset growing in value, but they can also then feel safe, like, hey, I got my money out, and now I can go buy something else with that money or whatever I want to do. They can keep everybody happy.
Yeah, but why would I want my money to go buy another one if my money's in that one?
Well, you get debt equity, it builds up, right? So you buy a property, like I've got a property now that's worth about $77 million. I bought it for $20 million. If you never refinance and then take any of that money out, then yeah, your return on the original investment is growing and growing, but your return on equity is actually shrinking as you build equity a lot faster than you build cash flow in the property. So by re-leveraging that, whether it's from selling or from refinancing and taking cash out from that loan, putting that back to work. I mean, people talk about high interest rates today, but give me a break. If you can go borrow at 6%, we go make 20+% in a deal, that's 14 points of positive arbitrage right there. Why wouldn't you want to do it? So for me, it's about maximizing your return on equity. And if you sell it, you can redeploy all the proceeds. So some people want that. If you refinance it, the bank limits you to say a 75% loan to value, you can redeploy the majority of your proceeds, but you leave some locked up in that asset. The challenge is to manage that and do it the right time in the cycle. And that's where a lot of people right now are really not doing well, which is to our benefit as buyers, but sucks for them because they bought when the prices were ridiculously high in the cycle.
Yeah, which was been the last, 3 to 4 years?
I'd say the last 5 years, really.
And so you weren't in the game. You were just watching, and now you're back in the game heavy duty.
I was coaching the soccer game for the kids.
Yeah, but dude, I'll tell you what, like most people weren't smart enough to do that either. Like, dude, believe it or not, you did the right thing. Like you got to go hang out with the fam, spend time that you can't get back. You didn't lose anything. Coincidentally, the market wasn't ideal anyway.
Right.
And now you got to spend time with the kids.
Yeah, it was cool, man.
There's a lot of people that don't make that decision. What made you make that decision? Your parents weren't around?
My parents weren't around, and I feel like I had a lot of friends that are older than me. When I first started buying apartments, I want to say maybe around, 25. So all my friends that owned apartments were in their 50s or 60s. So they had already had their kids, had them grown up, and they all told me like, dude, it's going to happen so fast. And you hear that, you've never been a parent before. Like, of course, you're going to say that. But then once you actually have kids and you see how it just kind of starts to roll by at a faster and faster pace, it hits you. So from hearing them talk about how I wish I could go back and trade that, have less money now, but more time with them when they were small and they were home, it just kind of made me think, why don't I listen to these guys? And I had one mentor in particular. He runs the majority of the portfolio, I think all of like the Southwestern United States, for the largest property management company in America for apartments. And his brother-in-law, has been my best friend since we were 4 years old. He happened to be the president of the Houston Apartment Association the year before I was. So having that kind of family friend where his brother-in-law and we're like brothers, and having him tell me, Trey, dude, you have enough money, spend time with the kids. And he would tell me that like every time we had lunch. That made a big impact. His name is Mac Armstrong.
Good dude right there. Smart dude. Yeah. How old was he?
I want to say he was probably in his maybe late 40s, early 50s the first time we had that conversation. But he kept reiterating that point when we would talk.
Yeah, usually you got to get a little older to be that wise. We trade youth for wisdom. You ever heard that?
Oh, yeah.
So, folks, Trey Stone is a real estate investor with nearly 30 years of experience specializing in multifamily. Originally from Pasadena, Texas, not California. He studied finance at the University of Texas, Austin, where he bought his first property. In Austin?
Yeah, bought a rent house there from my college professor.
Was it a apartment building?
No, just a little rent house.
So you started out with a single family home?
Yeah, I sure did.
When did you realize apartments were smarter, better?
Man, I bought that house and I screwed everything up, did everything wrong, still did pretty well. I thought, that's kind of cool. Being in a business where you can make all these mistakes, it still does okay. But I also realized that it took a lot of time. And I thought, if you're going to only make maybe a few $100 a house in cash flow, net of the financing, because you're going to have financing if you're like me with no money, I thought, what's going to happen when I have 100 of these things? You know, how am I going to keep up with all of that?
Did you plan in the beginning to have a whole shitload of them?
I did. I wanted to make that my full-time gig. So I bought a few more. And then at that time, I was also doing mortgages because I got out of school with my finance degree, and it was kind of an easy segue into the mortgage business. As I started doing loans, I found investors were my best clients because they would come back over and over and over and over again. Primary residence clients, you know, they're going to come to you, maybe once every 7 years on average. So even if they love you, and that's if they don't go somewhere else. If I do a good job for an investor, he's going to come back multiple times a year potentially. And so I had a couple of those guys that were buying apartments. I started brokering apartment loans too. And from there, one of those guys kind of took me under his wing and said, what are you doing rent houses, dude? And his name was Emery Jacob. And I said, I'm doing that because I'm broke, man. Like, I'm starting with nothing. I don't have a lot of money like you do. So you don't need a lot of money. Just like me, you need partners. But I'll show you how to do it. So next morning, 7 a.m., I was blowing him up, and he later jokes about it. He said, man, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. You're going to follow me around like a lost puppy dog for 2 years. But I did.
So what is the secret? Like, let's say listeners right now, because everybody, I think the secret's out. Real estate's a good damn investment. I think there's a ton of people in real estate now. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, like I said, my uncle owned an apartment, but nobody was buying apartments. Nobody knew what you hear now.
Yeah.
So when do you think that changed? You even said in the green room when you were doing it, there was like 5 of you. Now how many do you think there are?
I can't even imagine. There's got to be thousands of guys that are raising money from groups of people. They call them syndicators. Back when I was around, most of them, we called ourselves lead partners, but same thing. I think that the big difference today is that a lot of people are using social media to appear to have a lot of experience and have a lot of skill because maybe they're great at making videos, but you got to ask them for a copy of the deal sheet. And then when you get a copy of the deal sheet, then afterwards, not at the same time, but after they send it to you, then ask for a copy of the settlement statements from all those closings to see if they're full of it or not. And if you look at that deal sheet and you see, like what you see on my deal sheet, where it's like, hey, okay, here's the proof. Here's the settlements from the title company. They bought these properties cheap. They sold them for a lot more money. They obviously added value in that process and made millions of dollars in the process. Now, they at least have the chops. They have that experience. But I think that a lot of people today that I talk to that come in off of our social media ads, they have actually gotten deals where they've lost money. And it's really sad. A lot of times they've saved for their entire career and they've lost money in those deals. And the reason they lost that money is they picked the wrong lead investor because somebody had a great social media video, but their deal sheet was, I bought all this stuff. How much have you exited? None of it. So they didn't really have the proof, but people didn't know to ask for that because they were sold on the video.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you also have a course where you lay it all out for people.
I sure do. It's on your platform.
Yeah. I just found that out. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I had so many people tell me
I'll
about
look at it after another day. I'll jump on and look at it, make sure it's like really badass, and then we'll figure out how to get that thing promoted too. Because you give those people the course, and they go out and start making money, and then pretty soon they have the money, and they do want to invest.
Exactly. A lot of them have moved over the years from being my students to being my partners, and some of those students now have bought more deals than I have and done more volume than I have. I've got one guy who's done over $3 billion worth of deals that started out never owning a piece of rental property until he went to one of my classes. And so that's kind of a cool thing to see that happen. But yeah, for any of your viewers, the Bomb Squad, if they want to hop on it, they just type in Brad to the discount code on treystone.com. They want to get on the community. And instead of having to pay what we normally charge, it'll be, I think it's like $125. That was the cheapest we could get our CRM to make it still work and lower the cost of that. And that gives them a year access to all the single family and multifamily classes that we offer. So virtually free for your audience.
When you say $125,
I mean $1.25.
For $1.25?
$1.25.
You're going to cost me money. It costs me more to deliver it than that.
Yeah, we don't normally charge that, but for people that put in that Brad discount code, after seeing this podcast, they'll get access to it for that.
Well, folks, listen, you ever say I never have done anything for you? Well, now you know. Look, even though it wasn't me, it was Trey, but dude, that's awesome of you. Because there's a lot of people listening that they think and they just assume they can't do it, when in reality, you started the same way. They just need to get started. And your system, your training system, will teach them everything they need to know.
I never like to say it's everything you need to know, but I would tell you that it's going to make it massively easier than it would have been. And my advice to people is take a system, whether it's mine or somebody else's, and combine
nobody's selling it for $1.25.
Well, no. Yeah. And I'm not either normally.
And I want to see Bomb Squad. Listen, I want you to go buy it even if you're not interested. I just want to I just want it to blow up. $1.25. Shit, everyone can do that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a no-brainer.
So $1.25, and I know the system, obviously. So they're just going to be able to go through all the courses from start to finish and kind of learn the game, or at least get up to speed.
It's all on demand. Yep.
That's awesome. And then is there a community in there?
Yeah, there's community in there, and we have all the videos in there. It's both single family and multifamily. The people teaching the classes, whether it's me or one of my employees, we all own real estate. So there's nobody teaching in there that doesn't know what they're talking about. A buddy of mine that's done work for me off and on for years, that's been president of the Texas Apartment Association, was president of Dinnerstein. Remember that company? They were the biggest student multifamily housing company in America. So if you were a student living in some kind of housing, building made for students at some college, chances are they probably built it. He was president there for 25 years. So he teaches classes in there. We've got another buddy of mine that taught classes in there that has owned over 400 rental homes. So it's great stuff, talk about people who are really doing it. And I hired Dr. Nicole Fisher, who did all the classes for Robert Kiyosaki's program for Rich Dad University, because I said I want to make sure this stuff has a flow and has a curriculum that makes sense. Because when I started, I did every program I could find, and a lot of it was BS, and some of it kind of set me back. Kept going anyway, but would have liked to have something that was better organized. So I hired her, and she's done it for several different real estate groups, but I feel like Robert's program with Rich Dad, Poor Dad being such a success is probably the best known. So she came in and said, what do you want me to do? I said, take everything you've learned, work with me and my team, and just make it better. And she said, yeah, but the people I've worked for before, they say that, but then they want to tell me exactly. I said, dude, you're the one with the PhD in education, not me. So I'm going to give you the subject matter experts. You design it where it's going to work for people. And the feedback I've had has been great.
Dude, listen, I think everybody should go take advantage of that. $1.25 is almost like, I'm not even joking, like that'll probably cost me money. But I don't care because I want, my mission is to get the knowledge from the people who have it to the people who need it, because I think there's a lot of good people out there. They just don't know. And if someone that actually knows can teach them, then you're going to inspire a lot of people to go get their first deal, go raise money. Does it teach you how to find people? Because I've always grown up thinking, I don't know anybody with all this money. Like, are you kidding me? How am I supposed to go ask a bunch of people for money when nobody I know has money?
Yeah, we show that. And look, you don't have to have all these rich Ivy League friends, I grew up next to a trailer park in Pasadena, Texas, in a very low income neighborhood, and got the crap kicked out of me pretty frequently going to and from school as a kid. And I started with nothing, but I found people in the beginning that give me, $5,000. And then I got to a point where I've had deals where I've had one investor give me 20 million at one time. So it just depends,
wow,
where you are in the journey. But if I hadn't started, doing all our seller financing, do you remember that late night infomercial, man, by Carlton Sheets?
Yeah.
The guy with like the Hawaiian shirts by the pool. I bought that thing, and I remember I was eating a big New Yorker pizza. You remember the Pizza Hut commercial for the big New Yorker? Mm-hmm. It was like $9.99. It was like 10,000 pounds of pizza for $10. And I was in college at the University of Texas getting my finance degree, and I'm eating that pizza and I'm watching this Carlton Sheets infomercial. I just gotten home from working at Paradox Nightclub as a bouncer for $7 an hour with no health insurance, right? So we closed at 4 a.m. So it's that late night time that TV is on. And I bought that thing, and it kind of got me started because he was the first person I heard saying, you don't have to have any money to do this. And it just kind of kept going from there all the way to 6,000 units.
So how do you not have to have any money?
Well, there's a lot of sellers that need to sell property. I've got a guy on a deal right now that's several hundred units in North Houston. They're upside down on that deal. And the most recent conversation that we had through a broker this past week was him asking if I would just take the note. So it would be like me assuming his note, no down payment at all.
You have to have credit?
You do.
So,
but you don't for rent houses when you're starting out. You do at the level that I'm at now. This is a large multi-million-dollar apartment complex. But if you're buying some rent house...
Are you going to buy it?
It depends. I'm trying to see if the lender will give me a discount. I was the largest client in America for this particular lender in 2007. So they've known me a long time. I told them about the deal. And so I need them to take a discount to that note for me to want to buy it. That's how screwed up the property is. So if they would do that, then maybe.
They probably will. Because otherwise they risk more, don't they?
Yeah, they lose more if they don't.
Well, because all they're going to do is repo it and then sell it for what it's, more likely less than what it's worth.
Yep.
So why not just give it to you? At least they know it'll be ran properly.
Well, they're going to have to take a discount to the note to give it to me, right? So if they say, hey, you can have it for no down payment, but I've got to take the full value of the debt today, not interested. That's the problem with running down property, not taking care of it like these guys did. But yeah, whether it's rent houses with a motivated buyer in your first single family deal or a large apartment deal like that, there are people out there that will work with you. When I started, it wasn't really situations like that where let me go negotiate with a lender on some multi-million-dollar complex. It was just, hey, can I get this seller just to finance the property to me? Because they just need to get out of it. And then when I get in there and renovate it, get it up and running, I'll refinance it, get them out, move on down the road. So my first deals were all structured that way.
Well, how do you get the money to renovate?
Well, at the time, I actually borrowed it. My first deal, I borrowed it from the seller as part of that note.
See, where are all these deals when I'm looking? Because every time I look, I get a bunch of deals and I go, well, how do I know it's worth that?
Yeah, you got to know how to underwrite deals. That's for sure.
Yeah, like what do you look for?
For me, I'm looking for deals with, if it's single family and I'm helping a client or a friend, because I haven't done single family in obviously, 20 years, but when I'm helping those guys, they're looking at after repair value. So they're just looking at comps versus what do you buy it for? What's the rehab? I always tell them double the rehab number because you don't know what you're doing. It's going to be more than you think. And then what's left over? If that's enough room for you to be worth it in the deal, go buy that deal. For apartments, it's much more complex. We have an underwriting model that's probably 8-9 different tabs in the worksheet. I'm sorry, in the workbook.
Does that course teach me that?
It does, but it doesn't give you everything you would need to know. What I tell people is like, I can't give you that. In other words, I can give you the spreadsheet and we do all the time for free. We don't care. It's just a spreadsheet. But you really need a mentor, I think, to kind of work through it. The way I did it and what I tell my clients to do is I just invested with somebody else first. And I was a passive investor in my first apartment deal. And that helped me move from a single family investor up to a multifamily investor because I could learn and watch as he would send all this information out to me and all the other passives. And you know what else? I wasn't that passive. I'd show up at property. I'd ask questions. And I tell people, if you're investing in deals and you always want to be a passive, great. But if you want to do like what you just said, learn that process. How do I underwrite these deals? How do I know it's worth it? And then you're not going to know that if you just sit back and collect your distribution checks, right? You've got to get involved and ask questions. And there's a lot of guys putting deals together that are happy to have a passive investor that wants to learn.
In my mind, I'm thinking, man, I just got to figure out how to find them and then underwrite them. Because I know people with money. I got a little money. And then the next thing I'd want to know is, what do you do to be able to raise rents? Because I figure if I buy it, let's just say I buy an apartment building right now, and I say, hey, everyone, rent's going up $100 a unit.
Yeah.
What's the harm in that? Do people move out over that?
Look, when you buy most of these deals that I buy, there's different types of deals you can do. I buy B and C properties that are value add deals. I already know that as we add value to the property, we renovate it, some people are not going to be able to afford the higher rent, and that's unfortunately just how it is. If we buy that property, we don't fix those problems, all the people who can afford it, their kids have to grow up in that environment, that rundown property. So to me, it is what it is. If we don't buy these properties and renovate them, make them nicer, kick out the criminals, and make it a safer place for kids to grow up, and also increase the rents to make it worth our while to do so, then you're just going to let these slums get worse and worse and worse.
So do you drive around the slums looking for places?
No, I have brokers. So I've been doing this obviously 26 years, right? And I've already exited close to $500 million worth of deals. So I have brokers that send me deals every single day. For example, I got a buddy of mine, he sold over $40 billion worth of apartments in Houston where I live. He sent me a deal 2 weeks ago that he just listed. He said, look, I haven't made the marketing package yet, so I couldn't send it out to our whole email list even if I wanted to. But I know you're back in the game now. Will you take a look at this thing? Because if you want it, we just get it to you before it even goes to anybody else. So I do kind of get access to stuff that at the beginning of my career I didn't. Another podcast host, here in Vegas recently just asked me to help him find the deal. So I called that guy and said, hey, I know you guys are a big national company. Who's your best broker in the Vegas area? I've connected them now, so they're in the position to be able to go out and bring this guy deals. Had him pre-qualified through the mortgage company that I work with to make sure that the sellers would know that he can buy an apartment complex of that size. So it'd be the same process for you or anybody else. They just have to have brokers that do this every day. I mean, Houston's the largest apartment market in America, but there's like 5 guys that sell 90% of those deals.
What are the qualifications to get pre-approved, and how do you know how much you can buy?
Are we talking single family or multifamily?
Multi.
For multifamily, they look at what your experience is. And that's why I tell people if they've never done it before, they're going to have a tough time getting off the ground unless they invest like I did as a passive investor with somebody else first. Because now you can say, how is an owner in this deal? We bought it for this and at this amount of profit or net operating income when we bought it. Now it's got this much, it's worth this much more, or we sold it for this much more. They've got that associated experience now, right? If you come in, you have no experience, then they're basically just going to say, okay, you're going to put 35% down and you're going to have 10% of the loan amount in post-closing liquidity. So net of that down payment, another 10% of the loan balance needs to be sitting there completely liquid. They know you could use if the property got in trouble. And if you use a third-party management company, they'll let you go ahead and buy that property at that point. That being said, there's more to it because they're going to order an appraisal to make sure that that valuation holds up. They're going to have an engineer go out there and do a property condition assessment. They're going to find out if there's environmental hazards or there's other work that's life safety or structural that needs to get done. So the lender is going to drive that whole process. That's why I tell people in the beginning, you're probably better off doing an investment in multifamily as a passive. And I know it sounds biased because I want people to invest with me, obviously, but really I don't care if it's with me or somebody else. If you jump into a deal with no previous experience in multifamily, it's not single family. And you may very well buy something that you didn't know how to underwrite. And sometimes these banks will let you buy something you shouldn't buy.
Well, that's too bad. It's like, you ever buy businesses?
I don't.
Businesses, believe it or not, I'm thinking are better than real estate even.
I mean, what I love about buying businesses is the fact that, like real estate, you're buying an income stream, right?
That's right.
And you can increase it. The thing about buying an apartment complex, it's a business. It's got trailing financial statements. Anything that's got trailing financial statements, will we agree that's probably a business?
Yeah.
It's not like you bought a car, like you bought a house. You're buying this, like, look at my 488 unit apartment complex. Right, we collect over $500,000 every month in rents. We've got all the different expenses, just like any other business.
That is a business.
Yeah, it is a business. The difference with other people that are buying, more of a, let's say, a service business or a manufacturing business, is that generally it's harder to borrow against those types of businesses. You get an SBA loan, usually for smaller amounts. But what's great about apartments is that I have banks competing to lend to me. And not just banks, but even better, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, CMBS products. So I can get non-recourse financing at very low interest rates. I've got a loan right now for $38 million on a deal that's 3.14% interest for 10 years with full term interest only. And it was, I could have gone all the way up to 75% leverage on that deal. How many businesses could you go buy the business and have a lender give you a non-recourse loan for 3% for the next 10 years with no principal reduction on the loan at all at 75% of what you paid for the business?
Probably none.
Right. Especially a $50 million business, right?
So when you're driving by, like, how do you know? Like, I always drive by these apartments on the way to my house, and I always tell my wife, see, that's what we need to be buying. That's what we need to be buying.
Yeah, it's
but
funny.
I never do it.
Man, it's funny because it's the stuff that nobody wants to buy. Like, the stuff that's pretty is what everybody wants to buy. You have very little margin of safety on those deals. You're going to buy at pretty much full market value. You're going to go up or go down based on whatever the market does. To me, that's crazy. I don't get it. I buy a deal that's, not pretty. I took investors out to a deal one time. I bought it for $12,000 a unit. Later, it was worth about $50,000 a unit. Wish I hadn't sold it. Today, it's worth $100,000 a unit. But I bought this property for like $12,000 a door. And I took him into the property, walked around, went into a vacant unit, and it stank to high heaven. And I said, guys, I want you all to just take for a moment, close your eyes, breathe in deep through your nostrils. I couldn't believe it. They all did it. Afterwards, I said, what'd you guys smell? I heard one person say,
death.
Yeah, I heard one person say, it just stinks, man. Somebody else said, I smell potential. All this different random stuff. I said, what you just smelled was cat piss, because this property is filled with feral cats everywhere. But that's also the smell of money. because this property that's run down, that's gang infested, that has all these empty units, that's a blight on the community, where they're selling poison to kids here, when they get out of school. And you could see them doing it, getting off the school bus and crowding out to the property, and those guys on the corner, meeting these kids.
So how do you get rid of those guys?
Well, I've got some good friends of mine that are former members of SEAL Team 6, and they help me out with that.
Well, that's a plus.
It helps, yeah.
Yeah, because you got to get rid of that bad element. Otherwise, you could get screwed.
Absolutely.
And what if you ever come across one that you probably shouldn't have messed with?
I mean, I've been doing it 26 years. Nobody said no yet.
If somebody like that decided, hey, I'm going to firebomb this place, you just get insurance.
I mean, we do always have to buy insurance. A lender wouldn't give us a loan without it.
Yeah, so you're covered even if they get nasty.
Yeah, the reality is that, they're trying to do business on this property, and they can go do that business across the street, and 9 times out of 10, that owner's not involved. Doesn't even know what's going on. Probably uses a third-party management company. So they just can't do it here. That expression when you're at the bar and they come up and tell you, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. You got to leave. That's pretty much the conversation that our guys have with them.
And these are badasses having these conversations.
Well, I mean, one of them has personally hunted down over 6,400 high-value targets as a team leader for SEAL Team 6. Another one of them was on the Osama bin Laden mission. Another one of them was on the Captain Phillips mission. They're pretty good at what they do.
Are they investors or they just help you out?
They help me out. I support veterans charities, and I also like to employ these guys. And, they have taught me a lot about how to do this in a way that is, avoids escalating any kind of violence. So we've never had any violence at any of the properties occur with the removal of these guys. But you think about it, they're selling poison to kids at that property. I got no sympathy for them. No.
I just don't know if I would want to deal with that. So I'd probably end up looking for a B class property.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff I buy, once we've cleaned it out, it's not like that anymore. So you're not dealing with it long term. But if somebody doesn't root the problem out, I think in this country today, unfortunately, we have a shortage of men, like real men. And at the end of the day, if we don't have people who are willing to stand up and clean these communities up and make them better, well, then we're just kind of giving up, aren't we? Yep. So I think at the end of the day, it's our responsibility. If we can invest money and we can transform these properties so kids don't have to grow up in that environment and kind of break that generational cycle of poverty and crime, and we can still make even more money by doing that. Because look at the value add, right? As an investor, put your money hat on for a minute, right? If I could buy it super cheap, it's in that situation. Fix that problem, make it a great, safe place for, workforce housing for families that just want to have a better life for their kids, and they've got to work. The kids are going to be home sometimes when they're not. They'd like the kids not to get mixed up with drug dealers and gang members while they're at work, right? So they just want to have that environment be safer. Well, they pay you a little more to live in those neighborhoods where they can afford. At my property, we get rid of those guys. We also put lighting at these properties. And when I say lighting, I mean baseball stadium lighting. We're talking, I've spent $180,000 in one property before just in lighting. So it is lit up. And by the time you get these people out and you light the places up, we also have security guards. I also pay police officers to get a free apartment, get a monthly retainer to be a courtesy officer on site. So now we have like 4 layers, right? We've lit it up. There's a reason that all this crime occurs at night, because it's dark. People feel like they can get away with it. Now it's bright as daylight. Anywhere in between my buildings, courtyards, parking lots, my residents love it, right? So first you've got that. Then you've got the courtesy officers there to basically be your tattletale. Let you know, hey, these guys are doing this over by unit such and such. Then you've got your police officer who's parking that cruiser right up front by the leasing office, and they're living on site. And anything's happened at that property, my staff knows they can call that officer. And then fourth, you've got my guys to take care of the guys when we first take over that need to be removed. The ones that are the gangbangers and the drug dealers.
Yeah, so as an investor, I would rather just hand you the money because, number one, you got it down. Number two, I don't have to deal with it. But number three, I get to participate in the upside.
Absolutely. And you get to feel like, hey, I did something that makes this world a better place and gives kids a shot. So, I mean, you don't always get to do the thing that makes you the most money that's also doing something good. That's what I love about what I do, is I get to kind of do both at the same time. I really got to tell you, I started out just doing it because it was the most profitable way to make money in my business. What I kind of discovered along the way was, oh, wow, like this is transforming everything in this whole area, not just my property, but the surrounding area. I bought a property, 4000 West 34th Street in Houston. And this deal was a 178 unit property filled with gang members, drug dealers, human traffickers, trafficking young girls, in the property. I seen them have a girl, underage, hood of a car, line of guys. I mean, crazy stuff, right? So I put an end to all that. And the property next door was a little strip center, had a little hamburger shop in it called Rosnowski's Hamburgers. And Debbie and Ron Rosnowski had run that property, had run that little hamburger joint for several decades, and they were on the verge of shutting down. So I turned this property around, got all these scumbags out of there, got the place leased up, looking good. And I would go eat there when I'd be there helping my staff and, visit my properties often. And I would have a burger over there, and they were UT grads like I am, so we're Longhorns, and I'd kind of chat with them as owners. One day they figured out who I was and that I owned the apartment complex next door, which was called Clearbrook Apartments. I renamed it to Montebella. And they said, "You're never paying again when you come here, man. We were going to shut this business down. We had so much crime. We had so many of our customers' cars getting broken into that we were empty. But ever since you fixed that thing next door, all of a sudden all of our regulars are back. We're doing awesome, man." And I said, "Well, that's okay. I want to pay. I appreciate what you guys are doing." But the point I'm making is that it's not just about that property. It's the whole community in that area is being affected by the blight from people just ignoring the problem. It doesn't go away when you ignore it. So that's my philosophy is let's make money and change it at the same time.
Dude, that's awesome, huh?
Thanks, bud.
See, that's a philanthropic. That's a good story right there. Like if anybody's listening, I think that's going to get them right there. Because again, there's a million people to invest with. I get hit up all the time. I got buddies that are doing this. "Hey, you want to go in on this with me?" I'm like, "Well, not really, because I want to do it myself. And whenever I go in, I don't really get much back. And I don't know what's going on. And I didn't learn anything. And I'm not helping out a community. And I'm not cleaning up the streets." Like all that on top of it, dude, I might be one of your investors.
Love to have you, man.
Yeah, no, for real. I need to see the terms, but I mean, I like that angle. Our mutual buddy with the apartment buildings, I gave him money just to kind of have him stop begging me for it, which because he's obsessed with like the deal, I think. But dude, I could get more return in a damn bank account.
Yeah.
Like it was, I don't get hardly anything.
Yeah. That's a function of buying properties that don't need all this work. I mean, to me, that's where I said, you make more money doing the right thing, as it turns out in my little niche. A lot of these guys are doing a great job, including maybe our mutual friend there could be doing a great job. But at the end of the day, if you're buying a property, just at or slightly below market value because the property is already nice, what are you going to do? I see these guys buying these deals and they say, I just feel like it's more of a safe investment. I said, safe is when, I think Warren Buffett, would you agree Warren Buffett's pretty good at investing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he says, invest with a margin of safety. Where's your margin of safety? How far below market can you really buy an asset that's already maxed out, that's already doing well? Not far. But you can buy these distressed properties at a huge discount, go fix it, and then now all of a sudden it's worth way more money.
Well, dude, that's your secret sauce.
It is.
You can fix them. See, because that's why I would stay away from them. I wouldn't want to deal with gang members and shit.
I mean, look, I understand it's not for everybody, but
you got the crew to do it.
I do.
See, so that's I'm telling you, I'd hook on that in your social media too.
Thanks.
Like
man.
show some of that shit. That will go viral like a son of a bitch. Matter of fact, tomorrow there's a guy coming on the show named Tommy G. You ever heard of him?
No.
He's got about 3 million subs on YouTube.
Okay.
And all he does is goes out for like a 8-hour day with a camera guy, and he goes and does like a little documentary. Well, he'll do I think he did the Houston gangs where he's at a trap house and he's filming it. They got the blurred out faces and the voices, but it's like a real trap house.
Yeah.
And he rides with cops. He'll, a day with a billionaire, he just does these little mini documentaries, and he gets like 1 million or 2 views because people want to see that shit. So if you go buy another property and you don't like set up one of those GoPros where it shows the sped up cleaning up of the joint or the before and the after, that would go viral. Like you should definitely do that.
I'm sure you're
especially if you're cleaning shit up. Like, dude, you could even make it a freaking show, like a real show. Like I'd watch that show. You know, like The Prophet turns around businesses.
Oh yeah, I love that show.
Well, if you're the cleaner, I'm telling you, dude, because people will get behind that shit, and you'll get massively known, massively quick.
Well, that's what led to me getting those SEAL Team 6 guys. Is that my wife was with me at a property one day that I bought that had all these sexual assaults and car break-ins and home invasions in these apartments on the north side of Houston. It was called La Montera, and I came out of that unit, and I went back over to my leasing office. And I plopped down a bag, and it was a bag full of guns and drugs and cash. And I said, call the cops, have them come pick this up. We got to go hit the next unit. And they're like, what's that? So I just dumped it out on the desk in the leasing office. And my wife was like, holy crap, are you serious? You just took that off all those guys? I'm like, well, yeah, they're selling boys into kids on the property. You got to do it. After that, on the ride home, where she wasn't real happy with me, she's like, you need some help. And I had some help, some security guards, whatever, but that's when she convinced me to get in touch with, some professionals. And then I got those SEAL Team 6 guys to come down and kind of work with me on this. And they made me realize how much I sucked at it, Brad. I'd been real lucky for a real long time. And now, fortunately, through them and some other guys that they've trained, they can do this for me. And they're better at it than I ever was. For them, it's easy day.
Dude, I don't see any of that in here.
Yeah.
Or your social media.
Probably should be.
Dude, definitely should be. Guaranteed should be. You'll attract investors. Because again, dude, I get hit up all the time. I don't, what's the return? I don't have any control. I don't like that shit. How long is my money going to be gone for it? Well, in some cases, as long as they want it to be. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, at least 10 years. I don't like shit like that.
Yeah.
But if I wasn't interviewing you right now or having a conversation, because this isn't an interview, folks, I'd be listening differently. I'd be like, dude, that's cool. You get a lot of people that have money that wouldn't even normally do it, but they're going to do it for that reason. The return is a bonus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dude, that's your angle.
Okay.
And the name Stone, it's got to play off of that, like, stone cold flipper or something.
Well, thanks for that advice. I feel like the guys that have helped me, they feel connected to the mission of it too. Most of them didn't grow up in, posh, fancy neighborhoods and get, easy connections with family members that were Harvard alumni, right? They grew up in some pretty rough neighborhoods like I did. So they found out what I was doing. They were passionate about it too, and kind of realized like, hey, this was something they could do after their career in that unit, and put some of those skills to work and do some good at the same time. So a couple of them, I was their first client ever, as they were coming out of, one of them 22 combat tours, and then 28 combat tours with SEAL Team 6. And it was kind of cool to see the connection they had with that mission. And from that point forward, I realize now that all these years I've been doing this, Brad, I never really talked about it with investors at all. As you said, it's not in any of that media, but it's because to me, it was just like, well, of course you would do that. You wouldn't buy an apartment complex and let drug dealers sell poison to kids and gangbangers having that. There are people doing trafficking of underage girls at the property, would you? But what I realized is that's what the majority of these lower end apartment owners, exactly what they do. They just let that go on. And by the way,
because they don't have the resources.
Yeah. Or they don't care. Or they don't even know.
I don't know about that. Like I might care, but if I'm all shit, I ain't going over there. Like, in other words, they don't have the balls or the resources. They're just going to, not do anything.
If they even know. If you talk to most of these guys, and some other syndicators in the real estate business, you have a lot of real estate guys on the show, ask them when's the last time they were at one of the properties talking to the leasing agent, talking to the lead maintenance guy, talking to the property manager, walking through the property, seeing what's going on, asking random residents walking up, what's it like living here? You feel safe going to and from your apartment at night, going to and from your car? What's it like? Most of them never visit their properties. They have no idea what's going on. And they're feeling like, well, I can't do that and also do the other stuff I got to do, right, to put deals together. But you can. I've been doing it 26 years. You absolutely can.
Well, I think you need to care first.
Yeah.
Some people are in it for just the money. The good thing about your spin on it is, again, the philanthropic, do good angle, but it's also the max profit you're probably going to make. Because the other guy we're talking about, he buys A-class properties and he don't care what he pays because, number one, it's not his money. Number two, he's not buying it for the value. He just believes that's going up. He's doing it for the cash flow. Mm-hmm. So if the cash flow makes sense, he'll outbid people just to get that cash flow.
You know what's funny?
Because I've asked him, I've said, why would you overpay? He says, I got to get the deal. So, you got 5 guys, fighting over it, for example, I'll outbid them because it's not about the price. The price will always go up. It's the cash flow. And he's buying only A class. He wouldn't be caught dead in a C class area. So his shit's maxed out, to my point. There's not much margin there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, you get a guy like you that, hey, the angle is let's go clean up America. Let's go clean up some of these inner city places.
Yeah.
You get people donating just for that. Well, they can donate and get a return. That's crazy.
And let me tell you, there are so many veterans that need a mission when they get out of the service. I mean, a lot. And you give those guys an opportunity to help you clean up a property and make money doing it and use those skills to give them a sense of purpose and mission coming out of the service. They're thrilled to do it. And they're everywhere in this country. So it's not like that's hard to find.
Folks, Trey Stone, if you're a veteran getting out of the military, you happen to be a little bit of a badass and you wouldn't mind cleaning up a neighborhood, reach out. And by the way, you guys, you find him at the Trey Stone or treystone.com. So we're hitting on, if you guys, aren't accredited investors, you probably can't, take them anyway. So if they're accredited, reach out. You'd take their investment. Yeah,
absolutely.
You're going to get the most for your money. I would guarantee that, only because, well, I better not, because I guess people get in trouble when they talk about crypto. So in other words, I would imagine you would get the most amount of return. I don't know what your terms are, but like a C class fixed is going to bring way more than an A class with a new amenity.
Right.
Because what I was thinking is like, what do? Well, cleaning it up alone is worth a raise in rent. You know what I mean? There's no gang members outside. That's worth more in rent.
Right? It's pretty obvious.
You're safe. Your cars are safe. It's going to be another $100 a month. But when you start talking about, plus we're going to do trash service, plus we're putting in a park in the center for your kids to, little things like that normally would raise rent.
Well, I go through a massive rehab. So it's not just cleaning out the criminals, but it's also the fact that we fix everything that's broken and then we add new amenities. So the property I just bought in December, right now we're putting in a brand new playground. We're putting in a brand new dog park. We redid the whole fitness center. By the way, they had a fitness center where none of the machines worked at all, including the air conditioner. And I'm in Houston, Texas. And, 110 degrees outside in the middle of summer. You imagine the inside of a fitness center with no AC when the outside is 110. No wonder the machines were broke, because who would ever go in there and use that, right? So we add these playgrounds, we add the little, the change to the whole culture. So for example, a lot of these properties I buy, they don't really have anything bringing people together at the community. So we start doing functions, every single month that are all for the kids. We don't really focus on the adults. We focus on the kids, because when the people see that their kids can come out and have a great time at our functions and have the bouncy houses and, little gifts and hot cocoa and hot dogs and hamburgers, and they want to come out and do that with the kids. And then they wind up talking to each other. They make friends. They get to know their neighbors. And in the process, they find out, oh, by the way, not only are we fixing this place, we're not just repainting it, but we're replacing any kind of broken stuff. You got a broken AC, that's going to get replaced. If you got a leaky roof, that's going to get replaced. If you got a leasing office that's kind of run down, we're going to fix that up, make it nice. You've got a big vacant area of the property, like a lot of them do, where it's just dirt because kids are just playing soccer. I'm in Houston, where the majority of our renters of these Class B and C properties I buy, they're Hispanic. So they're playing soccer here in this empty courtyard, and it's not getting a lot of sunlight. You got a lot of kids going back and forth and dogs. So it's just basically kind of a big mud pit. It's what these things turn into. We're going to go in and put a beautiful playground, in that area. I've even added soccer fields where we actually put in a full field and striped it and gave out jerseys and had different teams and had them play and everything. So we're completely transforming the whole entire property. We're not just getting rid of criminals, but I feel like where people screw up is they buy these deals and they think, oh, if I spend all that money, Brad, I'm going to wind up not making as much money. I'm spending too much money. Well, no, you were paying too much for the property in the first place because it was already maxed out. But if you buy it at a very low cost, because it's in really bad shape, it gives you plenty of room to do all the stuff I'm talking about. And you're talking about maybe adding 10% to the cost of the deal. Well, if I buy it at 30 or 40 or 50% below market value, and I only have to spend 10% more to add all these amenities that I'm talking about, make that place better and fix everything. And on top of that, I'm going to light it up, get rid of the criminals and bring in security. What I've just done is put myself in a position where I'm maybe now 30, 40% below what that value is, even net of that rehab. And on top of that, it's the only property usually in that entire submarket that doesn't have that criminal element and doesn't have that happening to these people's kids. So the combination of those things, it just makes it easy to stay full.
Is that why you were owner of the year, local, state, and national levels?
I mean, I would assume probably so. That was something that I wasn't in control of, but I was blessed that the local and then later the state and then the National Apartment Association, I guess they have processes of gathering, votes and nominations. And so I wound up winning all three of those. And I think I was the first person to win all three.
Well, that's probably why, though, because you're freaking cleaning the shit up. Huh?
Man, I grew up in a neighborhood like that. I know what it's like. I don't want kids to grow up like that.
Well, that's good shit right there, dude. What else was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you, like the return. So like what are the terms? What are the returns?
I won't buy a deal unless I can double the equity for the investors in 3 to 5 years or less.
No shit.
Yeah. Net of my fees.
And you look for them. What if people send them to you? Do you want any listeners to send you deals?
Sure. I mean, the reality is that all these deals are really brokered, like I mentioned, in my market by the same handful of brokers. And these guys have been doing it, and gals. I've got one of them right now that's a lady, Charlene Nixon's been working with me since 2004, just sent me a deal. But the point is that they've been doing this a very long time, so they kind of know already all the sellers and owners in the business. In fact, some of my friends through the Apartment Association, we've bought and sold deals with one another, in the past. But the reality is that a lot of people are looking at a deal thinking, if I drive by it, that's the property that I should buy. Not necessarily, because that seller might not care, might not be motivated. These brokers know which sellers are calling them, blowing them up on their phone saying, man, I got to get rid of this thing. I don't know what I'm going to do. Those are the people that I want to buy from because they're motivated.
Would you buy all over the United States or just certain type areas?
Never outside Greater Houston. For me, my family is the most important thing in my life, and I don't want to have to, fly all around the country constantly looking at properties. I'm already in the largest apartment market in America. Now I have investors all over the country, but for me, I don't believe in buying these properties and having them run by some third-party management company in some other state. I don't know what's going on. I own my own management company. I've always managed from the first deal I've ever done. I've always managed all my own properties. So granted, I have a team obviously helping me do that, especially when I had 6,000 units. But what I'm saying is that once you start buying them in all these different locations, either you're like that traveling salesperson, except to go see all these deals, or more likely, you're not seeing them. You're not walking them. You're not talking to your staff. You don't know anybody by their first name on property, on site. So as a result, you've lost touch with what's happening there. And that to me is a big, big problem. That's where a lot of these deals go wrong. So I buy them in Greater Houston, and there's no shortage. People say, Trey, why do you tell everybody every single thing you do? They could copy you. Good. Let people copy me. I want them to copy me. There is an unlimited number of screwed up, rundown apartments, not only in Houston, but all over the country these people can go buy. And if more people do what I do, we'll be living in a better country.
That's right. Hey, folks, I don't know. I think this is a good place to end it. Like right now, you got people probably listening to this with tears in their eyes. I think if you're an investor, like, dude, this is the best, passive investment opportunity I've heard of. Why? Well, again, because not to mention you're fixing shit. You're buying the C, it sounds like the bad C, almost D. Is there such a thing as D?
There are.
Yeah, I'll bet you're like between high D and low C properties where you can just, it sounds like you're bringing them instantly into a whole nother realm, which is why you can double your money in 3 to 5 years. These other investment properties, they're out buying trophy properties where they ain't doing shit, and you're victim of the market. And I was reading the other day that like, a lot of these apartment owners are going to be in trouble. What's going on in the industry where you might be in trouble?
Yeah,
anything?
I hear that all the time because it's so true of people that, I think they got in the business without the right mentors. I see so many people that were buying when I was telling all my friends, don't buy that deal. Don't invest in that deal. I had a buddy of mine. He's actually best friends with a guest you had on the show. You remember when you had Lee Labrada on the show? Mm-hmm. So Lee's a friend of mine too, but his best friend, Keith Klein, who was probably the best known nutritionist in the bodybuilding world, which is why he and Lee are, good friends amongst other reasons. He's invested in a bunch of apartment deals, actually with some people that I know. And I told him as he was buying those deals in those last several years, I said, man, now's not the time. Those deals are overpriced. You're paying too much. And that's how you're going to wind up upside down in the deal. And he came out to one of my investor events last year. I didn't even know he was going to be there. I didn't know he was going to stand up and say this, but he stood up just kind of on his own in the middle of the meeting and said, hey, can I say something for a minute? I'm like, oh, what's he going to say? But sure. And Keith stood up and he said, look, Trey told me not to buy into these deals. He told me that they were overpriced. He told me getting these variable rate mortgages with these short-term rate caps were going to wind up blowing up in our face. And now that's happening right and left, and he's unhappy he invested in those deals, right? So there's some basic principles of getting in the business that you have to know. You don't go in and try to chase the market and buy into the top of the market. And it's not difficult to find out where you are in that cycle. All the historical sale price of these properties are readily available with a million different sources for that information. So right away, am I buying at a time when I'm in a buyer's market or a seller's market? And I think a lot of people just thought they were smarter than the market. But the reality is nobody's smarter than the market. So you buy in at the right time. The second thing that you got to do is you got to have fixed interest long-term debt. These guys that came in, they bought deals that, in my opinion, was 7th grade math that didn't really work. But on top of that, they went and thought, well, I'm always going to have a 2 or 3% mortgage. Really? Is that the historical average with a Fed funds rate at 0 where you're borrowing at 2 or 3? No, that was an anomaly. And by the Fed manipulating the market in that way, we might have stretched out the typical 60 or 72 month cycle into maybe 10, 12 year bull market there for a bit. But eventually those chickens come home to roost, and it gets worse than it would have been if we would have had the correction earlier, right? The longer that runs, the bigger the asset bubble that gets created. So for me, this was very preventable, but it's a great opportunity right now. It's part of why I'm back. I mean, look, unfortunately for them, their misfortune is to our benefit because they overpaid for these deals. They over leveraged them with unsustainable interest rates. And a lot of them made that even worse by getting short-term variable interest rate loans with the bank forcing them to buy a rate cap. And those rate caps are usually 2, 3, 4 years. They're all burning off now. And if you go on to TREP, TREPP.com, I've got nothing to do with that company. It's just the biggest database out there where you can find pretty much every single commercial property in America and look at what their servicer is getting from them when they receive all their financial reports. What you're going to see is there are trillions of dollars, hundreds of billions in Houston alone of these deals where they don't even have a 1.0 debt service coverage ratio, meaning that right now the property doesn't make enough money to even cover the mortgage payment. And that was when they were at these lower rates. Where do you think they are now that the rate caps are burning off and the rates going from 3 to 7, right?
Well, it's going to screw some people.
Oh, big time. And they are already. They're going to foreclosure because of that right and left. There'd be a lot more of them, except the banks right now don't really want to have to go report on what their bond values really are on a mark-to-market basis. So to kind of avoid that, they're kind of doing the whole extend and pretend deal, but that can only run so far. Everybody thought, survive till 2025, and the rates are all going to come down. I don't know about that.
Folks, you heard it. You heard it here. Okay, if you want to make some money passively and invest, if you got a little dough and you're accredited, reach out to TreyStone.com, get a hold of Trey, see what the terms are, make your own judgment. Don't base it off my encouragement, even though I would encourage people to do it. Why? Because, dude, that's why you should be doing it, man. Let's go clean up some damn neighborhoods and make the max amount of money we can make at the same time. If you're not an accredited investor, but you like what you're hearing, dude, go for $1.25, not $125, $1.25. Get a training system, and it is a multi-million-dollar interactive training technology to teach you exactly how to get involved, find your first deal, get your first deal, so you can make a little money and then become an accredited investor. If you've been sitting on the fence waiting for real estate, well, folks, now you've heard it. It's time to get back in there. Timing's right. I would suggest that you jump. Is that why you called it?
For them to get that price, just so they know, the audience knows, they've got to put your first name in there as a discount code. That'll bring that price down to $1.25.
You got to put in Brad. Make sure my team puts it in the comment. Is that why you call it transformational investing?
Yes, I feel like that is my calling, is to turn these properties around. I didn't start out with that intent. I just kind of did it because I grew up in that type of neighborhood. I started buying these properties that were, low end Bs to low end Cs and trying to move them up to C plus or B plus properties. And I found out, holy crap, we got these drug dealers and gang members and traffickers living here. I guess they got to go. So in the early days, I'd just go visit a unit in my board shorts and my, t-shirt and knock on the door and have a conversation and get folks to move out that were doing that stuff. And then over time, I realized, wow, those deals are the ones where I've made the most money. So now I just focus on deals like that. But to me, you're transforming not just the property, you're transforming the finances for the investors, you're transforming the lives of the residents, you're transforming the lives of the employees who not only work there, but often also live on property because they get that employee discount at these properties. That's common in the apartment business. And then that whole surrounding community, the Debbie and Ron Rosnoskis of the world that run the burger shops and all the other small businesses right there near these properties that are getting preyed upon by these same criminals that nobody's rooting out.
You heard of the prophet for businesses. This is the savior for real estate, or the cleaner. I don't know which one I like better. That's freaking good, man. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Yes, sir.
Guys, you heard it here. If you're interested, go do that. If you're not, you know what to do, and that's keep it real.